Good afternoon, everyone. I welcome you all to the 11th session of this ongoing FDP program organized by Department of Physics, Tripura University. This session will be chaired by Professor Devajyoti Bhattacharjee, the senior most professor of this department. And the speaker of this session is Dr. Hemen Kalita from Guwahati University. So may I request Professor Devajyoti Bhattacharjee sir to conduct the session. Sir, kindly. Sir.
Thank you, Asad. And now, on behalf of this Department of Physics, I welcome everybody to this session. This is the last session of the 4th day of this FDP lecture, and also there is another day left. Tomorrow will be the 5th day. And now, in this session, the speaker is Dr. Hemen Kalita. I think that he is present here. Yes, and he is the assistant professor, Department of Physics, Guwahati University, and he is doing a very good work. I am just giving a brief introduction about him. His research interest is on 2D material graphene and design and growth of nanomaterials and thin films, graphene-based humidity sensor, soil moisture sensor, and nanomaterials for wastewater treatment. And here's 5 ongoing projects, including that project from UGC BSR and also SAT DST, and another important project, that Innovation Technology Generation project. He got this grant. Already, one patent was granted. And also he applied another 5 patents. And he published that 13 publications in high reputed international journals, and at present 3 scholars are working under his supervision for their PhD degree. I am now requesting Dr. Kalita to present his lecture. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bhattacharjee, for a nice and very humble introduction. I would like to, first of all, I would like to thank the organizing committee for inviting me to deliver a lecture. Good afternoon to everyone. I hope everyone is fine and healthy in this pandemic period.
Hello,
As we
Kalita.
all know that.
Okay,
Yeah.
Can you speak a bit loudly?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, it is okay.
Yes. So, good afternoon to everyone. I hope everyone is, fine and healthy in this, pandemic period. So today I have chosen a topic which is, having application oriented, what you call theme, which is just to keep in, in line with the right now situation what we have, as we are looking for this, vaccines and other test kits and sensors. So from the application point of view right now, this is the time where people are looking into lots of applications of science and technology, especially more focuses are on nanotechnology. So keeping everything in mind, I have chosen a topic which is very very similar and having a real life application. So I hope everyone can see my slide.
Not it, sir.
So the title of my talk is graphene quantum dot based soil moisture sensor for agriculture applications. So in this title there are few important things. First is graphene quantum dot, and then there is a soil moisture sensor. So these two are though these two are very different, but in this talk I'll be talking about how these two different topics I have merged together and came up with a solution for this agriculture application. So I don't know how the participants are all of nano or material science, but since I don't know the participant expertise area, so I have used a very few basic slides at the starting to give a a clearer picture to the topic. So it's a very brief slides. What is nano? So in Greek, nano means dwarf, and mathematically nano is around 10 to power minus 9 meter. So for your information, let me tell you, coronavirus size is also within that range. If I'm not wrong, I think 80 to 60 to 140 nanometer or something like that. So it is within that range only, in nanometer range. Anyway, so 1 nanometer is actually a 10 to power minus 9 meter. But mathematically it's fine. We can always say that 10 to the power minus 9, 10 to the power minus 8, but how to visualize it, that is the more challenging thing. If you see, if you tell this 10 to the power minus 9 to a person which doesn't work in nano, it is very difficult to gauge actually what is 10 to the power minus 9 meter. So I have just taken a very very simple example to to make you understand or imagine how small is 1 nanometer, or how small is nano. So I've just taken an example of a human hair. So if you see, this is a human hair, and if you see at the bottom, there is a term written as 10 micrometer. So there is a scale, there is a white line over there. So that white line, the length of that white line is basically 10 micrometer. So if you see, if that white line is 10 micrometer, then this thickness of the hair will be maybe within, is more than 50 micrometer or something like that. So we can say that human hair, the thickness of the human hair is around 50 to 100 micrometer. So now we can gauge is, now we can gauge how much is 10 to power minus 6 meter. So at least we know that human hair is around 10 to power minus 6 meter. Now let us try to imagine 10 to power minus 9 meter. So if you uh, so if you take a human hair on the left hand side, if you can see the left hand side, I have taken a arrow mark, yellow arrow mark, and then there is a scissor. So if you try to cut, which is not possible, just theoretically imagine, if you try to cut human hair into 1,000 pieces across the what you call, across the longitudinal of the hair, you try to cut it 1,000 into 1,000 pieces, then mathematically on the right hand side, if you see this kind of pieces you will get if you cut longitudinally, you will get small pieces like this. Now if you cut into 1,000 pieces, now mathematically if you see at the bottom, 1 by 1,000, if you cut 1 micrometer by 1,000, then mathematically it becomes 10 to power minus 9 meter, which we can say this 1 nanometer. So now we can imagine that if we cut a human hair into 1,000 pieces, then one small piece, the thickness of the one small piece will be within the what you call range of 1 nanometer. So now you can imagine how small is 1 nanometer. So so now if anyone tells us, we can give this example to tell them the dimension of to relate the dimension of 1 nanometer. Now in nano, there are many nanomaterials has been used over the years, discovered over the years, and people are using for different applications. There are many. If you check the list will be enormous. There will be carbon based, there will be metal based, there will be oxide based. So it's a huge, the list is quite huge. But my interest is one in one nanomaterial, and that is graphene. So this topic might be very new for many of you. Graphene is a nanomaterial, and I mainly work in this nanomaterial. Now why I have chosen this nanomaterial, or why people, you can say, all over the world are in fact there are centers in Manchester, in MITs, in NUS. There are different centers of graphene opened up dedicatedly only to work on graphene. So there must be something, but people are so interested on this nanomaterial, and there are so much work going on right now all over the world. So people say that graphene is a revolution in nanomaterials, though I'm not justifying, or I'm not saying whether this correct or not, but yeah, there are few datas which says that it is actually a revolution in nanomaterials. So let me show you a few datas. So this is a old data, but still quite relevant. If you see the roadmap of graphene, if you see there are two, diagrams. There is a smaller one, the green color one, and then there's a bigger one, which is red and blue. Let us look at the smaller one, that is the green color one. In the green color one, if you see on the right hand, sorry, on the x-axis, it is the year, and one in the y-axis, it is the number of publications, which number of publications on graphene. If you see the trend after about 2004 or 5, it has exponentially grown to around 18,000 to 16,000 paper per year in 2013-14. So that is a huge number. So that shows that the work in graphene is exponentially increasing over the years. Now if you see the bigger diagram, that is basically the number of patent published on graphene, and again the curve is quite similar to the journal publication. In 2000, after 2002, it has exponentially grown to around 3,500 to 4,000 patents a year. So this two curves actually shows that a lot of people and lot of groups are working um, on graphene, and they're publishing and getting patent on graphene at quite a at a rate, at a very high rate. So this shows that graphene is actually a revolution in recent years. And if you see the year, it is quite near. That means it is happened in the last decade itself, in this decade only. The datas are within a few years time only. So with this we can say that the graphene is actually a revolution. Now what is graphene? Now graphene is basically a two-dimensional object. It is one atom thick. Um, Obviously it's a carbon. It's a carbon atom. It's all carbon, so it's one carbon atom thick. The hybridization is sp2 bonded hybridization, and the lattice structure, it looks like a honeycomb lattice structure. So carbon carbon bond length is sorry, the carbon carbon bond length is 0.142 nanometer, and this is the structure on the right hand side. If you see top right hand side, this is the chemical structure of graphene. It looks like a honeycomb lattice structure. Now graphene, people say that it's a mother of all graphitic material, because if you wrap graphene, you can get zero dimensional fullerene. If you roll graphene, you get one dimensional CNT. And if you stack graphene on top of one another, you can get three-dimensional graphite. So basically, if you say on a other note, three-dimensional graphite is a layered structure material, and it is composed of several layers of graphene, and all the graphene layers are held together by van der Waals forces. So graphite is basically a layered structure of graphene. Now the distance between two graphene layer is around 0.34 nanometer, and they are actually held together by van der Waals forces. So in a very simple, in a one liner, if we can define graphene, then we can define graphene as graphene is a one atom thick planar sheet of sp2 bonded carbon atom densely packed in a honeycomb lattice structure. So that is the very simple definition of graphene. Now graphene is actually discovered in 2004, and it was discovered by two scientists from University of Manchester, Andre Geim and Konstantin Novoselic. So it was actually discovered in 2004 by them in the University of Manchester, and they got the Nobel Prize in 2010 for this discovery. So what is the method they have used to discover graphene? So they have actually used a very simple technique, which is known as a Scotch tape technique. If you see in this slide, in the slide number 11, I suppose. So you see there is a piece of Scotch tape, and on the piece of Scotch tape they have taken actually flakes of graphite. That means graphite peeling out graphite, or graphite flakes, you can say, on the top of Scotch tape, and they keep peeling off with the Scotch tape until and unless it becomes the thickness of the graphite becomes very, very less. They keep peeling off. They once they will peel off, and then they again they will peel off, and they will continue this process until and unless the peeling of graphite becomes very, 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 very thin. Now if you take that peeling of graphite under a microscope, then if you are lucky, you might observe single layer or maybe bi or tri-layer graphene. So the method looks like something like this. So in the slide number 12, if you see, you take the image is a little bit blurry, but still we can see this is a Scotch tape. On the Scotch tape, we put a graphite flake, and then with this, and then we stick the Scotch tape together so that it gets peeled off, and this process is again repeated. And if you see, this peeling off, there will be a series of peeling off done on the Scotch tape, and we will continue this process until unless we think that it is peeled off so much that we get a very thin layer, and after that we will transfer that peeling off graphite onto a substrate, maybe a silicon or a silicon dioxide, and then under microscope, if we might observe. So if you see, this is the optical image, and at very few portions we can see single layer of graphene. So there are methods to detect single layer and bi-layer. I'll talk about that in the later slide. So in this optical image we can see the single layer or bi-layer. On the right hand side you can see an image of graphene, bottom right hand side, and this is the optical image where it is shown as this portion is single layer graphene. Now, in a very simplest way to understand what is graphene, which is obviously to a layman, you can always explain graphene such with like this. So if you consider graphite as a book, then if you take a single page out of the book, that single page is nothing but a graphene. So this is a very simplistic way to understand what is graphene. So the whole book we can analog that as a graphite, and the single page of that book we can analog that as a graphene. If you can see on the left hand side in the slide number 13, that is the optical image of a single layer graphene. Now, why graphene is so interesting? So obviously they should not, they have got the Nobel Prize not because of discovering graphene. They have got the Nobel Prize because graphene has lots of exciting properties. So I have listed few of the exciting properties, and I think the graphene is the only material which shows this kind of property. Single material shows this kind of different properties. So I have listed few of them. So one is high carrier mobility. Graphene is a very high carrier. Graphene has very high carrier mobility, in fact more than the silicon which is used in the devices. It has a long range ballistic transport. Long range ballistic transport means the electron travels from one edge to another without getting scattered. So it has a very long range ballistic transport, that scattering is very, very less, in fact nil. Theoretically. So
Hello, Dr. Hemen. Hello. Dr. Hemen.
Has a very high thermal conductivity.
Hello.
The mechanical strength is also very high. In fact, graphene is assumed to be 300 times stronger than the steel. So it's a highly transparent material. Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
There
Hello?
was, your sound was breaking. So now it's
Hello.
okay.
Now you can hear. Now it's fine.
Now it's okay. Now it's okay.
Okay.
So please.
Okay, maybe some network problem is going on right now.
Okay.
Today, Guwahati is highly, rain is pouring like anything. So maybe
Okay,
network
okay.
problem is. So
Now it's
let
okay.
me
Please carry
okay,
on.
let me continue. So why graphene is so interesting? Andre Geim and Constantine have got Nobel Prize not because of discovering graphene, because graphene, is having so many exciting properties. So I've listed few of them. So if you can see in this slide, I think you people can see. So it has a high carrier mobility, more than the silicon. It has a long range ballistic transport. That means if the carrier moves from one edge to another in the graphene, there is no scattering. The scattering is very less in graphene. It's a high thermal conductive material as well, and the mechanical strength is also very high in graphene. In fact, it is 300 times more stronger than the steel, and it is highly transparent as well. uh, it absorbs only 2 to 3% of light. So it's a very rare material which is highly transparent as well as highly conducting. So people are thinking in such a way that it is a replacement for FTO and ITO as well, which are actually transparent as well as conducting material. So it has lots of exciting properties. There are many, I have listed only few of them. So now since we know that graphene is so having so many exciting properties, and people have also shown methods to discover graphene, sorry, synthesize graphene. But the problem is that the method which they have shown, that is the exfoliation method, in that method we get graphene in a very small quantity. So that means if we want graphene in a larger quantity, then we might need different methods. So there are many methods which researchers are exploring. A few of them are mechanical exfoliation, which I have already talked, which the Scotch tape technique, where the graphene yield is very small, though the quality of the graphene is very high, but the yield is very small. Then there is another method which is mainly used for so many years now, that is the chemical synthesis. Why chemical synthesis is the most explored method? Because in chemical synthesis the yield is very high, very high yield, and it is very cost effective as well. It doesn't require expensive equipments or expensive materials. So chemical method is mostly used. There is another method which is known as chemical vapor deposition method. This method is also widely used, but only problem is that in this method this method is a little bit expensive, but the quality of the graphene is very high. So in fact it is very similar to the exfoliation method, but the yield is very high. And there are other methods like epitaxial method as well. So graphene synthesis can be categorized into few methods, three important methods, and there are other which are more explored. That is the micromechanical exfoliation, that is a Scotch tape technique method, or you can say sonication method as well. There is a sonication method as well. Micromechanical exfoliation is one method, chemical vapor deposition is another method, chemical synthesis is third method, and there are other methods. But people in for graphene synthesis use mainly the chemical synthesis method, as I have already told you why. Now how does a graphene look like? So this if you see this slide, this on the left hand side, top left hand side, this is the false colored image. False colored means the color of the graphene is not like this, because you cannot observe colored image in microscopy. These are all taken from scanning electron microscopy. So this brown color, if you see this brown color,
Hello. Hello. There is problem in sound. Hello.
or
Dr. Kulita,
graphene.
there is
These are
problem in
graphene.
sound.
And if you see this, those are basically silicon single layer graphene. Hello.
Your sound is breaking. Hello. 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 Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Your sound was breaking. Now sound is okay,
Hello.
but very low. Can you hear
Can you hear
me?
me?
Oh,
Am
okay.
I audible now?
Actually, now it's okay, but earlier sound was breaking tremendously. So maybe network issue, but now
Now
it's
it is
okay.
okay.
Yes, yes, yes.
Now it is okay.
Yes, yes,
Now it is okay.
yes.
Whether the slides are visible.
Slides are
Am
visible.
I visible right now?
Slides are visible. You are also visible. So
Okay. Okay. Slides are visible. Okay. Fine. Okay. Uh, so uh, so I think this slide is visible now to everyone. So if you can see, this is the graphene image, and you can see the bright, this bright brown patches. These brown patches are basically graphene, and these yellow patches, if you can see, these yellow patches are the background of graphene. That is the substrate on which we have deposited the graphene. So uh, this yellow lines are on the back end side of the graphene. So if you see the color, these are actually not real colors. These are actually false colored. You cannot get color in a electron microscopy. So we have just to for beautification, we have just colored the image. On the right hand side, if you see, this is the magnified image of graphene. This green, if you see this green, sorry, so if you see this green thing, this is basically graphene, and this brown, light yellow and brown color is the background. So graphene is basically, you can analog with a bed sheet, and you can actually see the similar property in graphene as well. You can in graphene you can see the properties like folding. The graphene sheets folds with each other. You can see overlapping property. One graphene overlaps with another like this. So you can see overlapping properties also. And wrinkles, yeah, this property is very common in graphene. You can see wrinkles in graphene as well. So these are few properties of graphene sheet while observing the microscope. So in this image, the average size of graphene oxide sheets is found to be around 2 to 4 micron, and the height of a graphene comes around 1 nanometer. So if you look at the bottom image, the bottom right hand side image, so this image is basically known as the atomic force microscopy image. This technique is actually used to measure the thickness of graphene. So with this we can say whether graphene is a single layer, bilayer or trilayer. So in this image, if you see, this is a graphene sheet, and the height. AFM is not meant for the size of a graphene. This is not a method to measure the size, though you can observe the size, but that is not accurate. For size measurement, we always use scanning electron microscopy. For height measurement only, we use atomic force microscopy, though you can gauge a little bit idea about size, but that is not accurate. So in atomic force microscopy, we get the height of the graphene, and if it comes around 1 nanometer, that means we can say it's a single layer of graphene. Now today in our topic, we'll be talking about graphene quantum dot. So graphene quantum dot is basically a derivative of graphene. So graphene has many derivatives. So one of the derivative is graphene quantum dot. That is, from graphene we can get graphene quantum dot as well. Another derivative of graphene is a oxidized form of graphene, which is very famous and very popular among researchers, which is known as graphene oxide. So that is the what you call the second derivative of graphene. And there is another derivative which is known as, here I have noted down as graphene paper, but basically that is the stacked form of graphene. That means if you stack graphene on top of one another, then you can get a paper like structure, which is another derivative of graphene. But I will not talk about the third derivative. Today I'll be talking about the first and the second derivative. So so in this we are mainly focusing this work on the first derivative, that is the graphene quantum dot, and we have fabricated graphene quantum dot from the second derivative, which is known as the graphene oxide. So let us look how they are fabricated and what is the application what we are showing today. So similar to graphene, graphene quantum dot, which is another derivative of graphene, there are many methods of synthesizing graphene quantum dot. That is like bottom up approach, top down approach, green approach. And people are exploring all the approaches in different ways. But one of the approach is we have actually synthesized in our lab. We have synthesized graphene quantum dot with all the approaches. But today I'll be talking about only the electrochemical method, which is a very recent work which we have published by synthesizing graphene quantum dot from electrochemical approach. Let us look at how we have done it. So in this electrochemical approach, though I will not be focusing too much on synthesis because my agenda is application, that is the sensing application. So I'll just give you the basic that in the synthesis process, we have taken an electrochemical setup where there are three electrodes. One is working electrode, another is counter electrode, and the third one is the reference electrode. The working electrode is basically a glassy carbon electrode, and the counter electrode is basically a platinum foil, and reference electrode is a platinum wire. These are very standard electrodes which people use for electrochemical reactions. The electrolyte here we have used propylene carbonate and lithium perchlorate, and the precursor which we have used for synthesizing of graphene quantum dot is basically graphene oxide. Why we have used it, I'll explain in the next slides why graphene oxide is very suitable for synthesizing graphene quantum dot. So this is on the bottom you can see this is IV curve, that is the voltage versus I current curve at different process. That means we have here there are three processor there are mainly two processes going on, but we have taken IV at 3 steps. Let me explain you how. In the first step we apply positive voltage across the working electrode. While applying the positive voltage, we miss this. After the positive voltage, we again apply negative voltage. That is known as the reduction. In positive, it is known as the oxidation. So in the oxidation step, that is the IV curve. In the reduction step, the blue one is the IV curve, and the red one is basically the initial IV curve without applying any voltage. So these are the steps of a electrochemical method. So I'll not go into much of a detail here because there are other things to discuss. So there are actually 3 steps, 2 steps: oxidation and reduction in an electrochemical approach. Now let's look at how the synthesis is done. Then things will be much clearer. So what we have taken initially, if you see this slide, we have taken a graphene oxide. Now graphene oxide, as I already told you, is an oxidized form of a graphene. So that means there are defects are there. So what kind of defects are there? Like carboxyl, epoxy, hydroxy.
Hello.
All are oxygen
Hello.
functional group defects are present.
Dr. Hemen.
Now
Dr.
we have
Hemen.
taken graphene oxide as the precursor.
May I request you to switch
Hello?
off the video? May I request you
Hello?
to switch off your video?
Oh,
Please
yes,
switch
yes,
off your
yes.
video because still sound is breaking.
Yes.
Then maybe good, better.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So is it
Thank you.
audible now?
Now audible, please.
Now it is audible?
Yes. Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay. So if you see this slide, I hope you can see this slide. So in this slide, I have tried to explain the synthesis mechanism, how we have got the GQD. So in the first step, what we have done, we have taken the graphene oxide, graphene oxide is basically the oxidized version of graphene. So oxidized version means there are many oxygen functional groups present in the graphene. In the first step, in the electrochemical approach, we apply a positive voltage across the working electrode. So in that step, what happens? There is a bond breaking. There is a carbon-carbon bond breaking happening because of this high voltage across the electrode. The bond in the graphene oxide start to start to break, and this is the step how it is happening. You can see this is the graphene, and then this way the bonds start to break because of this high positive potential. Now when we apply the negative potential, which is known as the reduction step, so the lithium and the propylene, which are the electrolyte, they are actually the positive entity. They moves towards the cleavage, that is the breaking side. They form as a layer in the breakage of the what you call the carbon breaking. So they forms as a cleavage in the breaking side. So in the oxidation process, there is a breaking happening. In the reduction process, this ion starts to move to the breaking side. After that, when we disperse this, so this portion which is been what you call the left out portion because of this breaking and the intercalation, finally we get a very small piece of graphene oxide, which we termed as a graphene quantum dot. So how the graphene quantum dot looks like, if you see, this is a TEM image, that is the transmission electron microscopy image of graphene quantum dot. The size in this particular image is around 3 nanometer, 3.5 to be exact, 3.5 nanometer. And this is the, as I told you, that graphene thickness is very important to confirm whether it's a graphene or not. So we have done an atomic force microscopy analysis, and this is the what you call the atomic force microscopy image, and you can see that the thickness of the graphene quantum dot comes around 2 to 10 nanometer, which is exactly filling with the literature. So we confirm that these are graphene quantum dot. Now since we have become successful in fabricating synthesizing graphene quantum dot, the next process is to fabricate the sensor. Now so let me focus in this a few minutes in the step of fabricating a device. So the device fabrication process is known as photolithography. So if you can see in this slide, here I'm trying to show the what you call the steps of the photolithography. In the first step, we take a silicon wafer. Here in this case, we have taken silicon wafer with 100 planes. So after the silicon wafer is taken, we deposit silicon dioxide on the top of silicon wafer. Now the process with which silicon dioxide is deposited is known as the deposition, thermal deposition, wet deposition or dry deposition. Here we have taken wet deposition. There is another method which is known as dry deposition. Generally, wet deposition is used for larger thickness. For smaller thickness, dry deposition is used. So this is the only difference, and there are obviously some other difference, like wet deposition is easier to as compared to dry deposition. So here we have used the wet deposition to deposit around 100 nanometer of silicon dioxide layer on the top of silicon substrate. After that, this step is actually the exposing step in the photolithography. How we have done it, you can see at the at the bottom there is a small image where there is a UV light, and that there is A is basically the mask through which the light will pass through, and B, C, D, this is basically the substrate. C is the silicon substrate, D is the silicon dioxide, and if you see B, that B red color is basically the photoresist. Photoresist is used on the top of the silicon dioxide. There are two types of photoresist. One is positive photoresist and another is negative photoresist. Here we have used positive photoresist. The difference between positive photoresist is negative photoresist is between the two is when light is exposed on the positive photoresist, it is the portion which is exposed to the light is soluble to the developer, whereas in negative photoresist, the portion which is exposed to the light is insoluble to the developer. This is the only difference between photoresist, positive photoresist and negative photoresist. Now, depending on this depending on this mesh, this A, the light will partially fall on some region and it will not fall on some region because of this. This A is basically a mesh which will allow light to pass on some portion and it will block at some portion. So if you see on the top image, now this orange on the top here, so this orange portions are basically the photoresist portion which is being left after developing. As I already told you, photoresist, the portion which is exposed to the light, is being removed by the developer, that is known as the positive photoresist. So that means here the gap is because here the light is exposed and it is developed by the developer. So this is the remaining light which is not exposed and it is remain on the top of the silicon dioxide. So we get a structure something like this: silicon dioxide and this orange strips. So these are photoresist. Now on the top of this we will deposit our contact, which is known as the chrome gold. Chrome is the adhesive, gold is the contact. Contact means to contact, electrical contact to measure the IV and other things, and chrome is the work as the adhesion between the gold and the substrate. So this green layer is basically, if you see, this green is basically the chrome gold deposition on the top of the whole substrate. Now there is another process which is known as the lift off process. In the lift off process, what happens? We will remove the remaining photoresist from the what you call the substrate. So what will remain? This orange portion will go, and with this orange portion, this green portion will also go off. So what will remain is the only what will remain in the substrate? Only the green portion. So these green portion are nothing but chrome gold. So that means we can get desired patterns on the top of silicon and silicon dioxide. So you can fabricate any kind of structure depending on your mask design. So you can you can fabricate square, you can fabricate smaller square, bigger square. Here we have fabricated, in this particular case we have tried to fabricate 100 micron square pads. So we are so here in this diagram we have shown that. So now, but for sensors we have used similar technique, but we have not used pads. We have used IDE structure. IDE means interdigitated electrodes. So what is interdigitated electrodes? These are, if you see what you call figure number E, these are interdigitated electrodes. So the electrodes lining one another, one side is one contact and the other side is another contact. It's like finger, it's like comb structure, two combs merging with each other, but it is not touching. So this looks more like a comb structure. Why we use IDE structure? The reason is very simple, because in IDE structure, since quantum dots are very small, so if we deposit it over a large area, then there is a chances that it might be deposited in over some contact. So we have increased the chances of getting what you call deposited by graphene quantum dots. So that's why we have used what you call IDE structures. The fabrication process is exactly similar. You can see diagram number A, silicon dioxide. Diagram number B, silicon dioxide and the positive PPR on the top, and C exactly same, that which portion is exposed will be removed by the developer. So these white lines will remain, this white, if you see, this step is known as patterning of photoresist. So that means which is exposed will be removed by the developer, which area is not exposed will remain as it is. After that, you see orange layer on the top. This orange layer is nothing but the chrome gold deposition on the top of this this patterning. And after the chrome gold deposition, this process is known as the lift off process. Lift off process means only gold will remain and the photoresist will be removed from the what you call the device. Finally, after E, we deposited drop cast GQD on the fingers. This is ID fingers. If you see this F like this is just a pictorial diagram to show that how quantum dots are deposited on the top of. So if you see these two portion are the contacts. This small square portion at the at the edge are the contacts where electrical connections are done. So these are the fabrication steps of fabricating electrodes in a via photolithography method. Now, this is the scanning electron microscopy image of ID structure. You can see very nice image of ID structure. This A, diagram number A. Uh, this uh, the size of this electrode which we have fabricated is around 200 micron by 200 sorry 2000 micron by 2500 micron length and breadth. And if you see these are the what you call fingers like structure where we deposited GQD. The electrical connections are done here in these two bigger pads. One will be connected to a positive, maybe negative, something like that. So these two are used for the this electrical connections. So if you see this, sorry, so if you see this diagram number B, so this B is basically the final sensing structure, how the microsensor looks like in our case with the electrical context. So this there is a black and the red wire. Basically these are positive and negative kind of wire, or you can say positive and negative, just to give to differentiate the voltages, so that we have used two different color wires. So now you can see there are a positive and negative at the bottom and the positive and negative at the top. This is because in this case we have used two sensors. Two sensor means I'll tell you why we have used two sensors. So first of all, forget about the second sensor, just focus on the first sensor. The first sensor is with GQD. That means we have fabricated a sensor with GQD with all the connections. Now we have also fabricated another sensor similar with GQD, but only difference is that on the top of GQD we have coated a polymer which is known as PDMS. So why we have done that? The result, in the result I'll tell you people that why we have, both the sensors are same. On one sensor is GQD on top of this ID structure, and the other is GQD. Only difference is that on the top of the sensor there is a PDMS coating, just a PDMS coating and nothing else. So this is then the C is the packaging, how the sensor packaging look like. We put a mesh on the top of the sensor. This mesh is a nylon mesh, and the features around 120 micron or so. This mesh is used because when we will use this sensor for the soil moisture, this soil should not come in contact with this sensor body. So that's why only the moisture will come in contact. So that's why to protect the sensor we have used a mesh. And this is the setup how we have measured the resistance with the LCR meter. So this is the microsensor setup what we have used in our experiment. So now we have so if you go start from the initial step, we have graphene. From the graphene we have graphene oxide. Graphene oxide is the oxidized version. With the graphene oxide, we have fabricated another derivative of graphene, which is known as the graphene quantum dot, which is the size is very small, around 3 nanometer. We have fabricated by a method which is known as electrochemical. And then we have also fabricated a sensor with ID structure, and then on the top of the ID structure we have deposited this GQD. Now we have exactly fabricated two types of sensor. One is GQD ID and the other is GQD ID, but on the top of that we have just done a coating which is known as the PDMS, just a cover. And both the sensor are ready for this soil moisture sensing. Now, since we know soil moisture is nothing but humidity, so we have actually tested our sensor first for humidity in the humidity chamber. Now if you see this curve on the top left hand side image is basically our GQD microsensor with humidity. So this is basically GQD microsensor response with, it should be with humidity. I think while typing I missed that word, with relative humidity. Now on the y-axis it is the resistance and the x-axis it is the relative humidity. Now just now I've told you I've fabricated two sensors. Now the sensor where the PDMS is present is known as with passivation, and the sensor where PDMS is not present is known as without passivation. What is that? I'll tell you in a moment what is meant by with passivation and without passivation and why we have done it. So just look at this curve. If you see the resistance, with relative humidity it is decreasing with the increasing in relative humidity. In case of this without passivation, that means where PDMS is not coated on the top of GQD, it is responding towards the humidity. That means as we increasing the humidity, the resistance starts to decrease. That means current starts to increase in case of where GQD is only bare GQD. Whereas if you see this red one, where there is a PDMS coating on the top of the GQD, when there is no what you call when there is a coating of PDMS layer, even if we change the humidity, the sensor is not changing its resistance. It is not responding towards humidity. So that is the reason why we have used two types of sensors to check whether the main purpose to use the passivation is to check whether actually it is the moisture which is changing the resistance of a sensor or not. So it is actually the moisture, because without the passivation we can see the resistance is decreasing, whereas with passivation the resistance is remains same even after changing. It is this resistance is basically the intrinsic resistance of the GQD without any moisture from the external media. So now since we know that our sensor is responding very nicely towards humidity, we are ready to go good with this soil moisture. So what we have done, we have taken two types of soil. Now there are different types of soil, and we have collaborated for this with few soil expertise, and we have chosen two different type of soil, two extreme soils, red soil and black soil. The only difference is these two soil is that red soil, this water holding capacity is low, and the black soil water holding capacity is very high. So that is the difference. It is kind of a two extreme soil. So that's why we have tested our sensor on two extreme soils to check whether our sensor is working fine or not. Now in this A diagram, A bottom A, if you see in the black soil, uh, it is and the x-axis, let me tell you one thing, this is gravimetric water content. Now in soil, we measure the water content. How we done it, how we do it, basically we take a soil, we first dry it in an oven and we make it water free, and then we weigh it in a weighing machine. After that we add water and then we weigh it, and then how much weight difference, basically that is the amount of water content in the soil. So that is basically is the gravimetric water content, that is the x-axis. So the water content is different, that water content is more, so the gravimetric water content percent is more. So that means very similar to the humidity, as we increase the gravimetric water content, the resistance is decreasing. We are taking 4 different types of soil moisture. So for different soil moisture, we see that the resistance, as the soil moisture is increasing, the resistance is decreasing. Whereas in the passivation case, even after changing the soil moisture, the resistance is exactly the same. So in the case of red soil also, it is showing exactly same. That is there is an increase in the current, that is a decrease in the resistance with the increase of the uh, water content. Whereas for the passivation, there is no there is no appreciable change in the resistance, which shows that water is the reason for this change in the resistance of the GQD sensor. Now in the sensor, one of the most important parameter, there are many parameters, one of the most important parameter is response time, that is the on off ratio, response time and the recovery time. So for this we have tried to calculate the response time of the sensor. Here what we have done, obviously we have tried to do the response calculation at a very low water content soil, because if our sensor is working absolutely fine for low water content, then it will obviously work for higher water content as well. So that's why the whole purpose is to measure the response for a very low water content. So we have measured for 9% and 7% water content in our case. Now how this on off ratio is measured is that when we insert the sensor in the soil, that is the point which is known as the what you call the on. That means the sensor is on. That means the current will start increasing and the resistance will start decreasing. And when we take out the sensor from the soil, that is the point which is known as the off. This is more of a manual kind of thing, because this cannot be done, um, electrically. This is more of a manual kind of thing. When you insert the sensor in the soil, that is the on period, and when you take it out, and that is the off period. So after that, we measure the response time. The response time is very fast. It is coming around 1/22, which is very fast. In fact, if you compare the earlier sensors as well, and the recovery time is coming around 20 to 30 second, 20, around 20 to 30 second. So it is very fast, the response time. Now how this this sensor is actually detecting this water moisture. So we have came up with a very plausible explanation. We have tried to explain how this GQDs are sensing. So we have came up with this a plausible explanation that GQDs are having different oxygen functional groups, as we know. This epoxy, hydroxy, and there are many carbonyl. So this water molecules, if you see this two blue and green, these are water molecules basically. This water molecule come and interact with this oxygen functional groups, and they formed they will physically absorb with the oxygen functional groups by loosely bound hydrogen bonding. So this first layer which comes in contact with the graphene oxide, that is known as the first physisorb layer. And as more water layer comes, they will interact with the that is the second layer will interact with the first layer, the third layer will interact with the second layer, and so on. So there will be a chain of physisorb layer. So in this diagram we have shown how the first and the second physisorb layer are attached. Obviously, since the first physisorb layer are mainly double hydrogen bonding, whereas the second physisorb layer is single, and so on. So obviously the higher order physisorb layer will be loosely bound, and the first physisorb layer, or the second or the third, the starting physisorb layer will be very tightly bound. So this is the mechanism what we have came up, that this because of this first physisorb layer, second and third, this way the water molecules are interacting with our GQD. So let me summarize what I have covered, try to covered in this topic. So this work is basically this work is recently patented. It already been granted, and this work was published very recently in a journal which is known as Carbon. So let me summarize what we have tried to gauge with this work. So first, we have successfully synthesized size tunable GQDs electrochemically at room temperature. So actually one point I have missed to tell you, that this all syntheses are done at room temperature. Earlier GQD or any kind of synthesis in electrochemically are done at very high temperature. So this is the advantage of our method, that we'd be able to synthesize GQD at room temperature only. And the average diameter what we have got is 3 to 5 nanometer for a different oxidation time. That means if you change the oxidation time, the size of the GQD changes. So for smaller oxidation time also, we are getting GQDs with uniform size. This is a very phenomena which are not been observed earlier in electrochemical synthesis of GQD. So this electrochemical synthesis are explored for sensing properties of the soil moisture, and we have found that these are very quick to respond to a variety of moisture content for both black and red soil. And we have found that the sensitivity is very high, that is around 99% to 97% for the black soil and the red soil. And the response time is also very fast, which is coming around 180 seconds. So this outcome exhibits that the electrochemical synthesized GQD is a very potential candidate for soil moisture measurement. So this slide is basically to show you that there is a whole wide variety of applications for this graphene thing. So graphene has different derivative, as I have already told you. You can control the synthesis of graphene and derivative like 0-dimensional graphene quantum dot, 2-dimensional graphene oxide, or 3-dimensional graphene paper. You can control the intrinsic properties of those materials as well, like conductivity, fluorescence, surface charge. We have done it in few cases. You can do the surface tailoring and surface modification, and depending on your this modification and derivative, you can use it for different application. Here we have covered the soil moisture, but you can also use it for chemical sensing as well. In fact, there is a whole new water purification application is also going on. There is a photoconductivity measurement you can do. There is an eye detector. You can use it for field effect transistors as well. So there's a whole broad branches of application for all this derivative of graphene. So these are the few listed, two patents have already been granted, and there are four which has been at the filing stage right now. So these are the 3 book chapters which I have recently got. These are the journal papers, conference proceedings. This is my group. Right now I have 3 PhD students and an MTech student and a few master students. So I have collaborations with IIT Bombay, IIT Indore, IIT Madras, and IIT Patna. So there are few projects which right now going on in our lab. That is the UGC BSR startup grant, and then there is a early career research award by DST, and then there is a ITGA innovation award, innovation project by Aztec. Then there's a young faculty scheme by university, and then there's a research R&D development by Aztec. Recently we have joined a project which is Indo-Korean JNC project, and we are the node member for that project. So thank you all.
Well, thank you, Dr. Kolita, for your nice presentation. Now, there are 2 questions.
Yes, please.
Amit Gupta asked that, do you think that Silicon Valley replaces by Graphene Valley in near future?
That is a $1 million question actually.
Yes.
So yeah, see, the point is graphene transistors are people exploring a lot. In fact, graphene quantum dot is also people are exploring as transistor, but I don't think Silicon Valley will be replaced anytime sooner, because though graphene has a many advantages as compared to silicon, but in one point silicon is winning, that is the robustness. So silicon is highly robust. We cannot, right now we are not able to get graphene in that form. That is the only thing. Otherwise graphene could have replaced silicon a long time back, but people are working on that, and there are very promising recent works which are going on, and I hope in recent years there will be a graphene based. In fact, graphene has already been used in as I have already seen, graphene has already been used in some mobiles and TV. So I think we are in that direction, but right now no time sooner. I think it will take some time.
Okay, Dr. Kolita, another question.
Yes.
Dr. Mrityunjay Mahato, he asked that you took patent, but whether this patent has been done with the help of attorney or by self-writing and defending.
There are actually 6 patents right now. In that 6 patents, 5 patents are done through a what you call organization which is known as IRCC, which is there in IIT Bombay, which actually deals with this kind of thing, where we generally write the first draft and what you call the prior art. Prior art means whether this work has already been done or not. You have to do a thorough literature, and then we contact them. They actually do all this attorneying process. They contact the attorney, because it's a very expensive kind of process. If you directly contact a personally attorney, they will take a lot of amount of rupees. So this is the process which we go through the organization. So we submit them, they contact the attorney, and then the attorney contact us, and then the final draft is done and it is submitted, it is filed. After that, there are process like examination reports and other thing comes, but we never contact the attorney personally. Now this is one process. The second process is the recent patent what we have done here from Guwahati University. So our group has filed a patent, but that is also again through an organization which is known as Assam Science and Technology Environment Council. They actually deal with all this patenting thing. So we submitted them. They will look into our novelty and other things, and then they will write help us getting the draft ready, and they, instead of the attorney, they do the process of this filing and the thing. So so you can also contact a what you call attorney personally, but that is a little bit expensive. So I will suggest you that you go through this kind of process, though it takes some time, but it saves a lot of money.
Okay, Dr. Kolita, there is another question asked by Rangoraj Bhattacharya. What is photoresist?
So this is basically in photolithography. This is it's a material what when we deposit on a surface. So this material basically interact with the UV light. That is in photolithography we shine the UV light on the top. If the UV light basically if it is a photo positive, there are two types of photoresist. It's a polymer kind of thing. The first, there's the positive photoresist. If the light is exposed, then it becomes soft and it can be removed from the substrate by using a developer, like a film we develop, similar. But if we somehow able to block it from UV, that portion becomes insoluble with the developer. So this is photoresist is a material which is used to form patterns on the substrate. You can form desired patterns. Suppose you can shine light on some particular places and block some particular places. In that way you can design a lot of things on the top of the what you call the substrate. So this is a standard material what we use in a photolithography process. So there is another type which is known as negative photoresist, as I have already told, but the application is exactly opposite.
Okay.
I hope I answered your question.
Okay, Dr. Kolita, thank you very much for your nice presentation, and also you give answers of all the questions. Okay,
Thank you,
and
Dr.
now this is the end of this session and end of today's FDP program. I just thank you everybody for your nice presentation. And now, Asad, you may speak something.
Thank you, sir, for conducting the session in a very nice way. Dr. Kolita, are you here?
Yes.
Okay. Another question is there. Where photolithography was carried out? Did you use custom built or any commercial setup?
Okay. So this actually the whole process is done by me. So it is done in the facility, what is the clean room facility in IIT Bombay. Very few institute have this kind of facility. So this is actually done in a clean room. So, and it is done in the what you call the INUP facility of IIT Bombay electrical department.
Okay. So thank you very much, Dr. Kolita, for your nice lecture.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Devajyoti sir, for conducting the session, and thank you all the participants for attending and also your patience. Today we are almost end of the program, although it's little bit advanced. So nice, you have time for enjoyment maybe. Tomorrow is the last day of the program, and so I request all of you tomorrow to join by 9:50 so that we can start on time. So see you tomorrow. Till then, bye.
Thank you, sir.